Hello, everyone. Welcome back to my channel for Erica Dawn Voices. I am Erica Dawn, professional voiceover talent, voice acting coach, narrator, and instructional designer out of Atlanta, Georgia. Today is a really special day because I am doing the first of a new series that I'm bringing here to my channel where I spotlight some of my students with Erica Dawn Voices and my coaching clients. And we are so blessed today to have Chinua Hawk here, who is a singer, songwriter, and now a professional audiobook narrator. Yay! Thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me.
Cool. So basically how this is going to go, we're just going to ask Chinua a few questions here just to get to know about his experience, not only with me, but I really want to give him the opportunity to talk to my audience and everyone out there just about his experience with launching his voice acting career, getting into audiobook narration, all of that good stuff, because we can all learn from everyone's experiences. And I think that he's had a really great experience so far and has gone a very long way in a short amount of time. And I'm so proud of his journey and all that he has accomplished so far. So we are going to get right into it. So Chinua, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
You doing
I can't
well?
complain. My only issue right now is I don't know whether to look into the camera or look at myself or look at
Oh,
you.
it's
So
fine. I'm going to be looking at you. I'm going to be looking at the camera. I'm going to be looking at both. I'm the same way. So whatever you feel comfortable with, you can just look at me. It's fine. We can look at each other so that we can,
All right. We see each other.
together. We see each other. All right, cool. So, Chinua, so I introduced you as singer, songwriter, audiobook narrator, but I want to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So tell the people about yourself, where you're from, where you grew up, all that good stuff.
Well, originally I'm from New Jersey. That is where I grew up and moved a few other places in between there, but I live in Atlanta now. So I'm actually part-time Atlanta, part-time New Jersey. So
Okay.
but yeah, I grew up in South Jersey, down where all the little farms, and so kind of a country life, but close to the city, if that
Okay,
makes sense,
cool.
you know?
Awesome. Good. All right. And Chinua is an amazingly talented musician and vocalist. And I just absolutely love and adore his music and his shows and all of that good stuff. So you want to tell the people how you got started in music? How did you get your start in the music industry?
Well, thank you for that. I just started by just singing. I was just a little kid who I love to sing. I didn't know if I was good at it or not. It was just something that was just in me as a kid. And so, gosh, I started singing in church when I was 5 years old. And then from there, when I got into high school, got a little more serious about like wanting to make it a career and started, sneaking away from school, going to music conventions and things like that, trying to meet as many people as I can and let as many people know as I could that I'm a singer. And because I heard Stephanie Mills do an interview one time when I was a kid on the radio, and she said that she was doing custodial work in an office building. And she was vacuuming the floor and she was singing at the top of her lungs. And one of the executives heard her, and that's how she got her start.
Oh, wow.
And so she said, sing anywhere and everywhere you can. So I kind of had that as my mantra growing up. Like, I'm just going to sing anywhere, everywhere.
Yeah.
And from there, I just started meeting people and making connections. And the more I allowed myself to be open and push past my fear, the more opportunities started to open for me as a performer and as a singer and a songwriter. So that's kind of the short version of it.
That's awesome. That's really, really important just in all facets of the entertainment business. I stress that a lot with aspiring voice actors, getting connected, networking with people, putting yourself out there. Nobody's going to come looking for you and asking you if you are a voice actor. You've got to show the people that you are, and you did the same with your singing. So that's great. Did you sing in high school? Or did you guys have like a choir or anything that you
were part of? Sing in high school? I was the kid always walking down the hallways, just singing all the time. People still talk about like, oh yeah, that's the singing boy, The funny thing is I am a big introvert and I am very shy. but for some reason with music, it allowed me to open up communication with people because I had a hard time talking to people.
Yeah.
So when they would find out I could sing, then they would start a conversation. It'd be easier for me to connect. So that was always
Mhm.
my little anchor to connect with people, the
I can
singing.
absolutely relate. As a dancer, I sing as well, but I haven't conquered my fears of singing just yet.
Okay.
I sang at a wedding for the first time, and that was very nerve-wracking for me because I don't like my family knows that I sing and I sing in
Mhm.
choirs and things like that. But as far as being on stage, not there yet. But I felt the same with dance. Like dance was my outlet growing up. Like I taught myself how to dance while kids were outside playing and things like that. I was inside watching TRL 106 in Park and recording the videos and learning the dances off the videos. And that was also my way to connect with people because I was extremely shy, especially in high school and things like that. I didn't put myself out there, but when
Mhm.
people knew that I danced and could dance and stuff like that, that was always like a good conversation piece. So definitely
Mhm.
broke out of my shell with doing that. So that's really, really good. Cool. So obviously as a singer, the importance of taking care of your voice. I stress that a lot to voice actors all the time that, this is your moneymaker. This is your instrument. This is the most important piece of equipment that you will ever own is your voice. So you had mentioned to me a little bit about some challenges that you were having regarding vocal health. So if you want to kind of expound on that and tell everybody about your experience that you've been having lately with that.
Yeah, so when I was younger, my voice used to recover a lot quicker,
Mm,
and but I was also more diligent about how I took care of my voice. But as I, had more experience and kind of learned the ins and outs of how to use my voice and use it at different levels, whether it was at 100% or 50%, I kind of got a little lazy with my vocal warm ups and cool downs, and just exercising in general, and just kind of hopping out the gate and going at 100. You know,
yeah.
and I guess maybe about 2 weeks ago, I ended up with a case of acid reflux
Mm,
that was pretty strong, and woke up one day, throat burning, voice was hoarse. And so I got the acid reflux under control, but my voice was still hoarse. And that week, I had to do a concert, and I also I was in the middle of recording an audiobook.
mm,
So I go in, do the audiobook, and the engineer asked me, he said, "You're a little hoarse." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "You think we're okay?" He was like, "Yeah, I think, you're doing well, so let's just keep going." And then I had the next day off, but I had the concert the day after that. So I had to prepare on that day off for the concert.
mm,
So I tell myself, okay, I'm going to keep it easy at the concert. And I did for the most part, but then got a little moment where things kind of got exciting to me, and I kind of started singing a little harder, a little more.
mm,
And then the next day after that, I had to be in the studio again
mm.
to record the audiobook. And fortunately, that day we had the wrong script for the audiobook recording. It wasn't the recordable script. And so there was some
Yeah.
question about whether we should continue or pause. I suggested we pause. And but after that day, when I left, my voice was just raw and just hurting. And I said, okay, we're gonna pause. I have a day. I'm gonna go on voice rest for the night and the next day. And I did that for a full day, and then it was time to go back into the studio again. But when I woke up that morning, my voice was still just raw, still a mess even after the vocal rest. So I decided to postpone that session for that day and move it to the following week. Just because I said it's better for me to get the rest that I need and allow my voice to heal, rather
Absolutely.
than me keep trying to push through because I'm afraid of losing my gig or whatever.
Mhm.
And so that's what I did. And it literally took me 4 days to get my voice back 100%. And so I stress to people all the time, like, do your warm ups, do your cool downs, do your vocal exercising, even on the days when you're not working. So then that way your voice is in a healthier position. So if something happens, you can maintain a little better. But I was being lazy. I'm not gonna lie. I was being lazy. And it was like, I don't feel like doing the vocal warm ups. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do the tongue
Mhm.
twisters. I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'll warm up in the car on my way.
Right. Well, that's really good advice. So thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that experience that you had also. And yes, it is extremely important. I tell people, just as you're sitting watching television on commercials, just kind of do some different things with your voice and just to kind of to help treat it and take care of it, especially like days before sessions and things like that. And things happen. We get sick. We have colds, flus, and things like that. And luckily, the we're going to get more into your experience with the studio that you're working with, but they're really, really great. They're really understanding. And, obviously, you want to put out your best work. So don't ever try to push yourself to the point where you just want to get it done or feel like you're going to upset the client or things like that. Like they want your best as well. And they want to make sure that you are well taken care of also and that you can put your best foot forward out there. So good with that. Good recognizing what is taking place also. So that's really good. All right. So, what initially piqued your interest in voice acting? What made you interested in doing that?
You know, I think I was always interested in it. I just didn't know that I was, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. So I
Okay.
have a lot of nieces and nephews. I counted yesterday. I think we're at 27. You
Oh
know,
wow.
yeah, some of them, are adults and they have their own children now. So
So
you know,
you're a great uncle too.
yeah,
Oh wow.
I'm a great uncle many times over. And
Oh wow.
but when the oldest ones, and I do it with the little ones now too, but when they were little, I used to always make up stories and go into these different voices with them, whether it was something scary.
Mhm.
This is terrible, but when the movie Candyman came out, I used to be able to do Candyman's voice, and my nephew, he didn't like it very much, but I would
Mhm.
just do all these voices, Elmo, Candyman, I mean, you name it. And I I guess I didn't realize that it was something I would want to make a career out of it because I was so music focused.
Mhm.
But it was something that I always enjoyed because my grandmother, she would, whenever she was telling a story about anybody, whoever she was talking about, she would go into their voice. And she,
Mhm.
she could do just about everybody's voices in the family. And it was hilarious. So I think I kind of picked that up from her.
Uh-huh.
And I think she would have been an amazing voiceover artist. But that kind of was in me then. But then, as you know, like a couple years ago, I really started paying more attention to commercials. I started paying more attention to the audiobooks that I've always listened to audiobooks.
Mhm.
One tour I would buy, when they were on CDs, I was buying them then and listening
Yeah.
to them while I was on the road, never thinking like, oh, I'd like to do that. I just thought it was cool,
Yeah. It's
So
funny you say that because when you say about your grandma, I used to do as a kid and younger, I used to prank call my aunt all the time. And I would always do, like, these crazy, silly little voices because I
uh-huh.
could, like, really, like, get her a lot, like, she would fall for it every time. So I would prank call her, and she actually kind of encouraged me as far as audiobooks is concerned. I always had
Mm,
an interest in voice acting, but as far as audiobooks, because she's an avid audiobook listener, she just
mm,
loves audiobooks, and, she gave me a big box that was full of CDs. That's when they were on disc, and it would be, like,
mhm.
10 discs in it for one audiobook, and she gave me a
Right.
huge box of all these audiobooks that she had already listened to, and she was like, "Just kinda listen to these, study these or whatever, it'll help with you with voice acting," and I was like, "Oh, thank you," and, like, I very rarely ever opened any of the audiobooks, and then she still fusses at me to this day, like, "You never even gave me back my audiobooks I gave you years ago," and all this stuff. I'm like, "Sorry, but hey, I am working now, so
Right.
probably." But, yeah, I used to me and my sister, we do voices of family members all the time too, like, she does great
Nice.
impressions of everybody, and so I can relate to that too, so that's really cool.
Mhm.
Cool, cool, cool. Alright, so you came on to one of my workshops that I hosted a little over a year ago, so it was last February or March that you attended one of my workshops. What was your initial expectation coming onto the workshop? Like, what did you expect to get out of it? Did you expect that you would be logging on and joining my course? Did you expect that you would just, get a few little tips here and there? Like what was your expectation going into that?
Honestly, I didn't have any expectations.
Okay.
I just decided I was gonna be open, because I
Mhm.
knew that it was something I wanted to get into, and I knew that I knew 0 about it, period, like, at all. So, I just came in wanting to be open and wanting to listen, and, I heard this guy, the other day on this video. He was talking about he tells people to do a test if they wanna be an audiobook narrator. tells them to put themselves in a closet and read for 2 hours every day for like a week in this closet. And then you'll know after you get done with that if you really want to do this. And of
Mhm.
course, when I came to your seminar, I hadn't seen that video, right?
Yeah.
This was
Mhm.
still kind of a dream, but I didn't need to do what he suggested because I knew that this was something that I really had a strong desire to do. So I didn't have any expectations coming in. I just wanted to be open and just hear what you were presenting, and also just get to know who you were. So I was just curious about you because I didn't know much about you coming into it either. So I was
Okay.
just open.
Cool. Awesome. Good, good, good. So I have a question later that I'll come back to with what
Okay.
you said about that test in the closet. I got a
Okay.
good question for you later. So hopefully I'll remember to ask you that because it's not
Okay.
on my list, but I want to ask you it. So we'll
Okay.
see. So was audiobook narration an avenue that you always wanted to take, or do you have interest in maybe exploring other areas of voice acting? And if so, what are those desires?
I want to do it all. I want to
Yeah.
continue with the audiobook narrations. I want to do the video game, anime stuff, the voiceover stuff for the movies, where
Okay.
you overdub. I don't even know what it's called yet, but
It's just dubbing. Yeah.
yeah.
Like for like foreign movies and things like that, where you do
Mhm.
like the subtitles and all. Okay. Yep.
I want to do that. I want to do some voices for Disney, or Pixar. I want to. I want to do it all.
Awesome. That's really, really good. Well,
Yeah.
you absolutely can and you absolutely will.
Well,
You
thank
are
you.
on a great, great track so far. So keep it up and you will get there. So, how many titles have you narrated so far?
I've done 5 so far.
Five. And to give the people a time frame, because like I said, it's been a very short amount of time. So you hit the ground running. You're off to the races with this audiobook narration stuff. So when did you get the first book? How long
Oh
ago?
gosh. I don't remember. I know it was a couple of months ago, a few months ago, maybe 3 months ago.
Yeah, it's definitely been within a 3 month span
Right.
for sure.
I don't remember exactly. I'm not great with dates, but I know it hasn't been that long.
Okay. Yeah,
So
like within 3 months, you've now narrated five titles
yes.
within 3 months. That
Hmm.
is amazing. That is awesome. And through a production house. So we'll talk a little bit later about, self-production and all that type of stuff. Okay, so tell the people how you got connected with the studio, how you initially submitted your audition. Was it an in-person audition? Did you just have to submit some audio to them? Tell the people a little bit about your audition experience and then what it was like when you got the first offer.
Okay. So I learned about this audio house through you.
Mm.
And you told me about it, and I went to their website and I looked around, and I was trying not to bother you about like, hey, how do you submit? How do you do this? And I had built my own little booth that I was recording in at home. Just with some like PVC pipe and a bunch of blankets, and
Yeah, yeah,
um,
I'm not all about DIY. Do it yourself.
right. That's it. And
Yes.
but it worked. And so I
Mhm.
started finding books that I loved, and I started recording myself, doing pieces of these books. And I actually started writing a few scripts for myself where I could do some characters and things.
Awesome.
And had no idea if I was recording this stuff correctly. It sounded good to my ears, so I was
Mhm.
like, okay, I'm just gonna leave it. I didn't even know if it was labeled correctly, or anything like that. And I ended up putting these all these snippets up on SoundCloud.
Okay.
And so after looking around the site and looking for the information, how do you apply, I couldn't find anything. So I did something that's way out of character, and I called the studio. Yeah, and
Hey.
I called there and I said, hey, this is my name. This is what I'm looking to do. And I couldn't find the information on your site on how to apply. And the young lady I spoke to, she said, oh, you need to talk to our casting director. And she said, I'll give you her email address. And I was like, fantastic.
I
So
love that cold call. That cold call works. I
it
tell
worked.
people all the time. It
It worked.
works.
I pushed past, my life has been an exercise in pushing past my fear, you
Good.
know? So the next section of fear for me was like, okay, now I'm going to email this lady, casting director. What am I going to say?
Mhm.
And literally all I did, I just said, I think I put for the subject voiceover inquiry or something like that, or voiceover work inquiry. And I sent her a message, introduced myself, and I told her that I was interested in applying to be a voiceover artist for them. And I said it way more eloquently than I'm saying right now.
Mhm.
And basically just asked for some information on how to apply. That's all I said. I didn't send any demos. I didn't send any links to websites. I didn't send anything. And so she wrote me back um, and just said, "Hey, why don't you fill out this profile on our database here? It's a private link." So she sent the link. I set up the profile. I attached the link to my demos that I made, and then maybe a week or two later, I got a request to audition for a book, and I was like, "Whoa, okay." This just got real, real fast. um, now let me before that, before I met you, or wait, or was it after I met you? Maybe after I met you, I had set up a profile on ACX, and
I think you had asked me, this was prior to you going into the course, I believe. You had asked me about whether or not you should do either or. And then at
right,
that time, I told you to go ahead and set up an ACX profile.
hmm
But I recommended that you go with trying to get into a production house as far as in studio work.
right,
So, yeah.
right. Now I had done one audition on ACX, and I didn't get chosen, so I was like, okay, well, maybe I suck, you know. Um, so anyway, so it'd been a while since I had tried to do anything, so I was a little nervous. And then the book that they sent me to audition for was really hard. It they wanted me to read the first 2 pages or something like that, and it was full of words in about every language you can imagine. And so I'm looking at this and I'm like, man, okay, I got to figure this out. So I'm looking up the words, trying to figure out how to pronounce them, and then I got to record myself, which I'm still learning how to do. So it was like
Mhm.
all this pressure. And but I did the audition and I sent it back, and maybe a week after that or so, it took about a week, week and a half, and I got the offer letter to do the book. And I literally was just like I yelled out loud because I was like, this is crazy. Like I can't believe I just got this book.
Mhm.
And I remember telling my parents and they were all excited, and like I got a movie role or something. But
Yeah, I
they
mean,
knew
it is. It's just,
it
it's
is,
just
yeah.
as huge. Yeah.
But they knew how much it meant to me
Yeah.
to do this. And so that's I think where their excitement came from.
Yeah.
And then it was like, oh God, I
Pressure's on, right?
I got to do this now. So I start reading this book, and the audition had nothing on the rest of the book when it came to the words and all the terminology from literally from all over the globe.
Mhm.
So that was the first one that I was booked for. But in between that, um, I got asked to audition for a second one. And I was like, okay. And this was a romance thing. And I was excited about it because it had my love in it. It had characters, I could do voices. And so but they told me, they said, but we need this audition back by tomorrow. Like I literally got it like 5 o'clock that evening, and they needed it the next day. So I went in my little booth and I started working out, figuring out what I was going to do for the characters. And this was my first time doing that outside of playing with my nieces and nephews. And so
Mhm.
I got it how I thought, I wanted it, and I recorded it, and I just said, okay, I'm just gonna send it. I'm gonna let it go, and that's what I did. And then they told me I got that one, and I was shocked again. I was like, this is crazy. Like, what is this?
Yeah.
So it worked out where I ended up recording that book, the romance one, first, which
Yeah.
I'm so grateful for because it gave me experience to see what being in the studio was like, and all of that before I got to that really hard one.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember you called me and
I did.
you were nervous. You were
Yes.
excited, but you were super nervous. Just
Yes.
for the people too, like the studio that he has been recording at for these titles he's talking about is the same studio that I am hired with for audiobook narration as well. So that's why he mentioned as far as like me referring him to that place to do that, to submit the auditions or submit the information. And so proud of you on the cold call. It works. I know that it's crazy. It makes you nervous,
Mhm.
but it absolutely works in this business. So very good job with that.
Thank you.
It's funny how you mentioned as far as you know your parents being really excited about that, because also like I don't read fiction novels for enjoyment. I can't get
Mhm.
through a book. Like my sister and my mom, they can read a book cover to cover in like 2 days. They
Mhm.
talk about me all the time because I'll read it like up to the last chapter and won't finish it. I cannot do it. And growing up, my mom used to always read Zane books, which are more romance, erotic type of books and things like
Mhm.
that. And my sister would steal the books and read them and sneak and read them, with it like real quick. And I could never do it because I just couldn't get into the books and things like that. And my first offer was through the Zane collection.
Oh,
So my
wow.
mom was super excited, like, what? Yeah, Zane. Ah.
Uh-huh.
And, at first I was like, oh, don't be mad at me. I didn't write the book. I didn't do it. Like, she's like, it's Zane, whatever. And then same with Mary B. Morrison. She's a huge Mary B. Morrison fan. And I didn't know who that was. But I'm like,
Okay.
yeah, I got an audition for a Mary B. Morrison book. You know who that is? She's like, Mary B. Morrison. Yeah, I read her books all the time. So yeah, it's fun to see others' excitement with you as well as very encouraging. So
Mhm.
that'll help me lead it into the next question that I said I was going to save for later. So with you having the experience of auditioning for an ACX title,
Mhm.
um, and when we had the conversation about ACX versus you going into a production house, not to say anything bad about ACX, those of you who are out there who are doing ACX and you're successful at it, you're making your money with it, go for it. It's perfectly fine. But I will always recommend getting into a production house or being hired through a production studio when it comes to audiobook narration, because it's just so much easier to me. So I want to ask you, now that you've experienced going in studio, working with audio engineers, sitting in the booth and just focusing on reading, focusing on delivering the characters and working through those words, do you feel that you would also want to put in that time to self-produce audiobooks yourself? Or do you feel like, yeah, I'll just stick with going into the studio and letting production handle it?
I think eventually, I wouldn't mind getting into self-producing once I have a better understanding of how to do it.
Mhm.
Um, because it would be nice sometimes to be able to work from home,
Yeah.
or work, from an island somewhere, uh,
Mhm.
which is kind
I
of,
know that's right.
what I would enjoy.
Mhm.
Um, but I like, the same way with music. I like being able to focus on the craft,
Yeah.
um, getting into the characters and really, figuring out who they are, and the voice you're using for them, or the emotion in certain areas. And if I'm thinking about recording, or punching and making, fixing a mistake, or all those things, are my levels, the right, and if I'm looking at, the levels and trying to stay in the character at the same time, it for me right now, it's a lot.
Yeah.
So I prefer right now, and probably for a little while, staying, going into the studio to do it.
I
So
feel the same. I
yeah.
feel the same way. Eventually, like I tell people too, like I am not an audio engineer. That is not my ministry.
Mhm.
I am a voice actor. That is what
Right.
I do. So,
Right.
yeah, I have an ACX profile. I pretty much let it sit there and let people. I've had a couple invitations to audition to things, but I don't go out of my way to audition for too much because I know that I just don't have the time to try to figure it all out. It's
Mhm.
just easier to go sit in the chair and let them handle it. So,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
get paid my money and know that I'm getting paid my money. So I don't have to fight with anybody. I know my
Right.
money's coming. So yeah, so that's that. So good, good, good. So with you going into the studio, what was when you went into the studio for the first time, just talk about your overall feeling, like your emotions, your adrenaline. Like, did you feel nervous? Did you feel scared? Were you scared to get out the car? Like, how did you feel when you first arrived at the studio?
I was terrified. I think I may have called you the night before or something, but
Hmm.
yeah, it was nerve-wracking because, it felt the same way it did when I started in music,
Okay.
or something happens in music that's a really big event or something that I haven't done before, and I'm like, "Oh, man." Because you wanna do your best.
Hmm.
And for me, in my mind, what I was telling myself was like, "Oh, you haven't learned this yet. You haven't learned that yet. You don't
Hmm.
even know all the terminology yet that they use in the studio, which is different from, when you're in a music studio. It was like all these things of, you know, I was going through my head like I didn't know. And then I had a countering thought, and that thought was, but you were chosen to do this. Someone listened to your voice and decided that you were the voice for this project. So just go
Hmm.
do it. Don't worry about what you don't know. Just go be yourself and just do what you did when you auditioned. And that's how I talked myself, into the building.
Yeah.
And it was another thing was like, this is what you said you wanted.
Hmm.
You said you wanted this. So do you really want it or not? You got a
Yeah.
choice. And so I just decided, I said, yeah, I want this. I'm gonna put that fear to the side and let it
Hmm.
propel me instead of hinder me. And yeah, that's how I walked in.
Awesome. That's really, really good. I love that. Good, good, good. So, with that being said, once you got in the studio,
Hmm.
sat in the chair, the iPad's in front of you. Once they said, "All right, we are rolling," how did you feel?
I mean, it was nerve wracking again. And I think I started and stopped about two or three times before I finally said, okay, Shinwa, just relax, get into the story, disappear
Mhm.
into the story. The same way you do at home in your little booth when you're doing the audition, just disappear into it. And so that's what I did. I kind of disappeared into it. But then I started thinking about, because I knew in a couple of chapters it was going to get really explicit sexually, you know.
Mhm.
And when you're reading that at home, it's one thing, but when you're in the booth
Mhm.
in front of somebody else, and
Yeah.
you're trying to read this and you're trying to sound sexy, and
Mhm.
and you're like looking at the corner of your eye, like are they looking at me? They think I'm weird.
Yeah.
So I had to kind of get all that out of my head too.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. I totally understand that because I tell everybody all the time, my first book the very first book that I ever did
Yeah.
was the wildest book. Like I cannot listen to it. Like I've listened back to I don't listen to all my audiobooks, but I've listened to a couple of the books that I've done.
Mhm.
That one I just can't. I'm like I can't listen to it. I think one of the samples I had my sister listen to one of the samples and she was like, "You need to clean your mouth out with soap." I was like, "I didn't write it. I just narrated it. I didn't write it." But it was
Ye
very nerve-wracking going into the studio because I didn't know anything about who was going to be in the booth with me, the engineer. I
Mhm.
didn't know I didn't know these names and who I was going to be sitting with. And I got to say all these P's and V's and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm just like, it's going to be so
Right.
awkward. It's so weird.
Right.
But I got used to it. And now I'm like, whatever. They
Well,
just deal with it. It's fine.
you know
So,
oh, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I don't know. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say what's funny what you said about your sister. One of my cousins called me and he said, "Hey, did Auntie listen to this book?" Or Auntie, he's talking about my mom. And I
Uh-huh.
said, not yet. He was like, "Man, you better get rid of chapter 6 before she does."
Listen, like I was like, "Mom, like you cannot listen to this book. I know you love Zane and all, but nah, you can't listen to this one.
Right,
And Daddy
right.
definitely can't listen to it, can't hear it. So please do not." But some of the other ones were still some of them got a little crazy, but
Mhm.
nothing compared to that first book that I did.
Wow.
Nothing. It was just
So they just
wild.
jumped you in the game.
It was wilder than wild. Like I don't even think like the most experienced like it was a lot, but I got through
Right.
So good, good, good. All right. So without naming any names, what's your experience been like with working with the different engineers at the studio? Have you had different experiences with directors and engineers than you had with others, or what's that been like for you?
You know what? I have not worked with any directors,
Okay.
um, but I have worked with multiple engineers. And I know that, they said some people like have an engineer that they like and they'll request that particular engineer, but I decided to just kind of be open and, just see who shows up and get to know them. And each one of them has been a completely different experience. It has been actually really good experience. And one of the things I saw about myself in dealing with the different engineers is I wanted feedback from them. Like I wanted
Hmm.
to know, like, hey, is this good? Am I doing a good job here?
Hmm.
And I think because they're so used to doing this with so many people, and probably people who are so used to doing it that they don't care about what someone else thinks about it. They just kind of go
Hmm.
in and do their performance and they leave. But for me, I wanted to know, like, how is this stacking up to the good ones, to the ones that are successful. And some would be very open and say, okay, um, these are some things I think are great. These are some things I think you can learn that'll help you to be better. And I really appreciated that. One in particular. Um, and then one one would just be like, yeah, it's good, solid.
Hmm.
Nothing else.
Yeah.
Just dry as he can be, you know.
Mhm.
And one guy was like, yeah, you sound very professional. So I just appreciate the different takes. And the guy that was dry, I kind of learned about him. He doesn't like a lot of things, but he
Mhm.
doesn't give you a lot of fluff. He's not the person that's going to do a lot of small talk, and he's not going to pump you up. But when he does say something, he means it.
Yeah.
So if he tells you like, "Hey, that was solid," he really meant it. You know.
Hmm.
um, and then there's one like that really uh, I'll say this, was amazing because she was with me during my hardest recording process. And instead of her, looking at me a certain way for having a hard time, she became like a team member. She was like, we're in this together. We got this together. We're gonna get through this.
Hmm.
And I have so much love and appreciation for her. I can't even tell you. I can't even tell you. Because that was definitely a make it or break it moment for me. And she said to me, she said, I want to make sure that you are successful. She said, so
Yeah.
we're going to fix what we need to fix so you don't have to come back here with 500 pickups. She said, because if you come in here for 500 pickups, you're probably done.
Yeah, I know. First of all, I know exactly who you're talking about. We won't
Hmm.
say who she is, but I know exactly who you're talking about. And she was the engineer on my first audiobook, the one that I
Wow.
said was crazy. And, you know, she said the same thing to me about pickups, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But
Hmm.
she was very transparent about, hey, we're going to get through this. We're going to get through all the edits that we need to get through now and get
Hmm.
you through it now because you don't want to have to come back here and do too many pickups things like that. Because and the way she said it to me was because you don't get paid for pickups. You got to come here. You don't want to be here for hours doing pickups because you ain't getting paid for those hours. So she was very transparent with that. But she also like my whole time reading the book, I'm like my thought process was, wow, this is a really great experience. I'm so grateful for this experience. This is going to be my last experience. So I better enjoy it now because I suck. This is terrible. She's not saying anything really about what's going on, but I know it's horrible. So I just better just love this while I can. And
Hmm.
towards the end of our session, she was like, "You're doing a really great job. You definitely will be back." And I was like, "What?" Like she was like, "You'll be back. You'll be back for sure." So she was super encouraging. And I think without her on that first book of mine,
Hmm.
I don't think that I would have been able to keep up my confidence when
Hmm.
being invited to come back into the studio. So
Right.
definitely appreciate her
Hmm.
for sure. And I've worked with her one other time on another book, but even just coming into the studio, they're also friendly and really nice. And anytime she sees me, even now, she's like, "Hey, Erica," and just like
Hmm.
really encouraging. Like so Yes. So I'm glad you had that experience with her. I'm glad you
Yes.
got to experience her because
Yes.
she's really, really great. So good, good, good.
Stay tuned to my channel for part 2 of my interview with Chinua, where we will discuss his approach to character breakdowns and much more.
I'm fortunate because I've had such a long singing career. I can, hear certain tones and mimic certain things because I'm used to using my ears that way. So some accents I can kind of pick up and mimic.